So far, so good. Beautiful facility, great teammates, great coaches. I'm ready to get after this year.
Just because of your familiarity with Zimmer play a role into why you want to come here?
Plays a big role. I know Zimmer, I know this defense, and it just I'm glad to be a part of this defense again. Because I played 6 years there in this defense, and it really helped my development of my game.
Linval Joseph is a space-eating nose/one technique defensive tackle who recently signed with the Dallas Cowboys. He might be the final piece needed to stop the run when it matters most. Despite being an older veteran player, Joseph remains one of the more powerful defensive tackles in the league. Linval Joseph has left his mark in the league, playing for multiple teams and enjoying a productive career as one of the premier run-stopping defensive tackles. His physical play style has made him a player teams must game plan against. While with the Vikings under Mike Zimmer, Joseph was a crucial part of their top-ranked defense and earned Pro Bowl honors in 2016 and 17. Now he's going to be working closely with Mozzie Smith and Jordan Phillips to establish a solid rotation ahead of the season opener. The Dallas Cowboys cannot let their success hinge on the one technique position. If Mozzie Smith hasn't proven himself and doesn't seem to be the right fit this year, it's crucial to keep addressing this position. The additions of Linval Joseph and Jordan Phillips demonstrate that they are taking this issue seriously, Cowboys Nation. So when you're taking a look at Linval Joseph, you're seeing a big-bodied, freight train of an athlete who stands at 6'4" and weighs in at 329 pounds. This massive defensive tackle is like a trash can full of dirt, and only a dump truck can remove him off the line of scrimmage. He's joining this defensive line, and with his addition, this defense could potentially be a top 5 unit. However, Joseph, along with the rest of the guys, still has to go out there and prove it. So on this play here, it's impressive to see a big defensive tackle like Linval Joseph getting to the quarterback. While he's not a sack specialist like Jordan Phillips, Joseph's stats suggest that he might contribute to 1 or 2 sacks in the season. With 14.5 sacks from 2015 to now, any sacks that he manages are a bonus for this defense. But it's good to see Linval Joseph get physical, knock this offensive lineman in the dirt, and lay a body on Lamar Jackson. So we'll go ahead and run it. So zooming in on Linval Joseph, these guys are getting off the ball. It's so good to be able to see this trench work. We know it is so important when it comes down to that defensive tackle position. But when you're going up against this guy, you cannot make a mistake. And this center completely collapsed. And playing against this type of player here, you got to get the technique things right, because if you give this guy the advantage, he doesn't get that many sacks, but if he knows that he can be able to completely bury a player to the ground, he has enough speed to be able to close in and get to the quarterback. Now, he's not going to be a guy that can go out there and get you a ton of sacks, but we all know that pressures matter as well. So a lot of these centers and a lot of these guards, sometimes these guys tend to be clumsy. So it's good to see Linval Joseph take full advantage of it. But seeing a guy going out there and capitalizing off of players' mistakes, closing in and getting to the quarterback, these are the plays here that can get the entire defense going. To be a top 1 technique defensive tackle in the NFL, we want to see if you can engage with linemen aggressively and find ways to position yourself to disengage quickly to get to ball carriers. Throughout Joseph's career, that's how he was able to make a name for himself. So it's going to be a run play to the left side. You will see pulling from that right guard, but locking in on Linval Joseph, seeing that this guy was aggressive with that offensive lineman and using his hands well, it was great to be able to see it from the defensive tackle. So we'll go ahead and split it. So zooming in on Linval Joseph, you see that these guys are engaging in contact. The running back gets the ball, and it looks like he was holding them up, but the details matter when it comes down to that defensive tackle position. Finding ways to be able to stick that right arm out right there could be the biggest difference when it comes down to that interior defensive position. And looking like he was stymied at the line of scrimmage, positioning yourself well to maintain leverage and find ways to be able to escape from that lineman and close in and get to the running back. And I love to see these details when it comes down to the defensive line. Every half a second matters, because a lot of these offensive linemen in the NFL, they can quickly wash you out the play. But when you have a player that's strong like that, he knows how to be able to gain leverage and extend his arms. That's how you can be able to rack up on a lot of TFLs. And there are times where I've seen on tape where his stamina wasn't always there. But when this guy's playing with high energy, even at this age now, I think that this guy can come to this team immediately and be effective, especially in Mike Zimmer's scheme. One thing I like about this big wide-body defensive tackle is his knack for being a space eater, clogging things up, and flooding the line of scrimmage. Being a defensive tackle in the NFL and having the ability to beat double teams is absolutely essential for this position. Not only finding ways to beat these double teams, but seeing a guy that can still make a play on a rep where Zach Martin is combo blocking, that'll definitely get your attention. So you will see the running back get the ball to the right and cut it to the left, but Zach Martin and that center would be double teaming Linval Joseph. But seeing Joseph clog the A and B gap and get to Pollard, it is needed for this defense this year. So we'll go ahead and spin a block. So keying in on Linval Joseph and Zach Martin, we know that Zach Martin is gold jacket. He loves to be able to get his hands on guys and drive his legs. But when you have a big body guy like Linval Joseph, it's so hard to be able to have run lanes. And this guy was able to get his right arm free. And that's why a lot of these scouts, they look for these big bodied guys because it's so hard. When you think that you got a guy, you're blocking a player, somehow, some way, they can be able to disrupt these run lanes. And he was able to get a hold of Tony Pollard and get him down to the ground. And there will be times when you need players like this. When you're going into those gritty games and you're playing those top teams, you need these defensive tackles to be slippery. It doesn't matter if it's a 3 technique or a 1 technique. We need this from guys like Jordan Phillips as well as Linval Joseph, because I believe that if these guys have this type of play, finding ways to be able to get away from double teams, it's going to get everybody going. And when you have guys like DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons on that defensive line as well, it could potentially make them that much more better as players. Another key aspect we need to focus on is what these defensive tackles do when the play is not coming on their side of the field. It's the little things that matter when analyzing film, and we'll definitely showcase that on the JC Network. We know that Mike Zimmer loves to use 2 big defensive tackles, and I'm sure we'll see packages with Jordan Phillips and Joseph together. This setup will likely result in a lot of double teams, allowing other defenders to make plays. So let's take a look at this in action. So you will see these 2 defensive tackles being double teamed. The running back is going to bounce it to the outside. So let's see the behavior of the other 5 players on the side where he's running to. So we'll go ahead and run it. So watching this play here, they're running that jumbo package, and all 4 of those guys double team Linval Joseph and that other defensive tackle. And the thing is, when these type of plays like this happens, it can be able to free a lot of guys up. So locking in on these 4 players here, it could be the same thing for the Dallas Cowboys. If you have players like Jordan Phillips and Linval Joseph in that lineup, we might see a lot of double teams. And it allows the safeties to go out there and roam and make plays, as well as the linebackers. And one thing about Mike Zimmer, when he was with the Minnesota Vikings, he always liked big defensive tackles, guys that can be space eaters and force the offense into multiple double teams. And this is gold when it comes down to Eric Kendricks and guys like DeMarvion Overshown, because this can allow you to be kept clean and go out there and make tackles. And this guy ended up fumbling the ball, and that can be the result of having a stout defensive line. So sometimes if you see these defensive linemen not making plays, but the offense forcing double teams like this, they had a lot to do with this play, even though they were nowhere near the ball. So seeing a guy that has shown that he can beat double teams, eat up blocks, and allow his teammates to roam, get a sack here and there, as well as having the ability to engage physically and be slippery enough to disengage, is exactly what we want from our defensive tackles. Let's get this guy used to the playbook and beat up on anybody we line up against. There are literally no excuses, Cowboys Nation. So on this final play here, we love to be able to see the aggression as well as the effort when it comes down to a one technique defensive tackle. You got to go out there and play to the whistle because every yard matters when it comes down to the gridiron and being an elite defense. So the wide receiver is going to be running a jet sweep, and you will see Linval Joseph. He's going to attack that right guard and run across the field and get to the wide receiver. And you got to have that type of energy, a guy with a high motor and having the energy to go out there and finish. So let's run it. So watching this play here, you see that these guys are clashing and he does have his hands to his face. You don't want things like that to happen when it comes down to the defense because that could be backbreaking. But this offensive lineman completely collapsed. And the thing is, with this type of guy, with that kind of power, if you allow this guy to be able to gain leverage, he will get right through you. But seeing him running across the field and locking in on that wide receiver, laying a body on him, it is great to be able to see. And you do not want a guy that's 329 pounds running full speed at you and placing his weight right on you and squashing you to the ground. Sometimes these players end up fumbling the ball. That's why these defensive coaches, they have to tell these guys to play with a high motor. Down in and down out, having defensive players to go out there and make a difference. So with a guy like Linval Joseph, it's so good to be able to see this team continue to keep nabbing at that defensive tackle position, not getting comfortable with Mozzie Smith. You do not want it to come down to the very end of the games where you cannot be able to stop the run. But seeing guys like Linval Joseph and Jordan Phillips coming in here this season, I think that this defense can go out there and impose their will on the opposition. But chemistry matters. A lot of these teams, they look good on paper, but it does not translate to the field. But when you have two stout guys in the interior, it's hard for these offensive linemen to be able to get to the second level because they're so busy with these defensive tackles. And that means that these linebackers are kept clean. And that's what brings the best out of those guys. So it's going to be good to see with this defense, but I love the approach that they have been taking, but they got to go out there and prove it, Cowboys Nation. So comment below and let me know what you guys think about Linval Joseph. And do y'all think that he can go out there and be productive and allow the other 10 players on the field to get busy? So make sure y'all like, share, and subscribe and hit that notification bell because the way the YouTube algorithm works, if you don't hit it, you'll miss on fire live streams and the best Cowboys film sessions on YouTube. All right, Cowboys Nation. Talk to y'all soon. Gone.